I am mute. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.
Hello
وعليكم
everyone.
السلام.
كيف الحال؟
الحمد لله الحمد لله
الحمد لله.
الحمد لله.
الحمد لله.
Exactly. كل شيء مزيان. Right?
كل شيء مزيان صافي
كل شيء مزيان.
صافي.
بخير.
يعيشكم.
الله يخليكم. كما يقولوا
دابا كل شيء من كل فن طرف. Right?
فما شكون يقولوا في الجزائر يقولوا غاية.
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 مريقل
تونس، هذه تونس.
حتى ليبيا.
تقولوا في ليبيا. اي اوكي.
في الغربي.
مريقل. اوكي.
Perfect. So hello everyone. Salam to all. Hope you are doing good. And I know this one is going to be a bit different than the episodes that we do, since it is going to be in English, but also the timing as well, because as we have pointed out, today is going to be Champions League finale, I believe. It's going to be at 8, so that's why we try to schedule around that, so that we can have more people with us, so that they can ask us questions about today's episode. And today's episode is, of course, Observation-Lounge. And Observation-Lounge, the idea behind it, and I believe the audience knows about it, it's about a roundtable for experts. And today's episode is going to be about CNCF certifications in general, and more specifically about Kubernetes. And with us, we have Walid and Shuaib. They are going to be helping us through this episode with by shedding light on different topics around that. And of course, helping me during this episode is going to be Mediha. So how are you doing, Mediha? All right, so I believe we can start with a very, very simple introduction, right? So you can take this one, Shuaib, right?
Okay, perfect. So my name is Shuaib Nimri. I am from Tunisia, and I am based in Toulouse in the south of France. I work as a solutions architect for Amazon Web Services, and basically I help customer accelerate their machine learning and data analytics use cases in the cloud. It's been now 3 years that I started to work in the cloud and data and AI world. And before that, I was working in the oil and gas industry as a systems and control engineer or electrical engineer. So I had to do a lot of effort to break into data, AI, computer science, etc. So I think I can have a lot of tips and insights, especially for people who are outside the realm of the digital and the cloud native world. So yeah.
Thank you, Shuaib. How about you, Walid?
First of all, I'm really pleased that I am with Shuaib. Shuaib is a fantastic human being. He's advocating for lots of good things. So it's a pleasure to be with him in the same broadcast. Thank you, Madiha. Thank you, Kareem. We have
The pleasure
been
is
like
mine.
the pleasure is all mine, believe me, Shuaib. So my name is Walid. I am from a neighboring country to Shuaib, not Tunisia, but I'm from Libya. So I'm based on Saudi. I'm working for Saudi Aramco, the energy company, for the last 15 years. Most of my work was with high-performance computing clusters, Linux clusters. But in the last 4 or 5 years, I have moved to containers and Kubernetes, and basically containerizations, mostly using Red Hat products. I'm one of the blessed one with the exam, the CKA beta. So I was participating in the CKA beta and passed from the first time, did the CKS, did the CKAD, and was one of the SMEs in the KCNA. I have lots of Red Hat certifications, mostly around OpenShift. So I'm Red Hat certified architect too. I try to help my internal customers with their container journey. we are not as agile as AWS, but we are in the same field. We're trying to help the IR4 customers, the one that really understand machine learning, data science, data analytics, and robotics and stuff like that.
Yeah, actually, we had one first question to ask. Well, first of all, thank you, Walid, for this interesting introduction, as well as you, Shuaib. And we had one first question, it was, which certification do you have? Well, Walid, you already answered this question, so the question is yours, Shuaib.
Yeah, so thank you for this question. So from CNCF, I have 3 certifications. I have the CK8, the CKA, and the CK8S, the 3 Kubernetes certifications. Otherwise, I am also, I have 7 certifications from AWS, 1 certification from Google Cloud Platform, and 1 last certification from Azure, Microsoft Azure Cloud.
Right, cool. Yeah, go ahead, sure.
Yeah, and since my background before passing the Kubernetes exams were machine learning and development, I started with CK8. For me, it was the easiest one to start with. People who have different backgrounds, who come from system administration, would tell you that they are more, they prefer better to start with CKA. So if you are from a system administration background, start with CKA. If you come from a developer background, start with CK8.
Yeah, you get that. Cool. And I'll be jumping on this question for you, maybe Shuaib, is that you come from background of data, I believe, right? So why did you take the certification, especially for the cloud ecosystem, and more specifically, let's say Kubernetes?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. So I had to help one of my customers to migrate their data platform from a Hadoop managed cluster to a Kubernetes managed cluster. They were mainly relying on Spark as their data processing engine, and they were trying to move to the cloud in the future. And with some calculations and some research, we figured out that doing Spark on Kubernetes in a cloud native environment reduces the cost of Spark workloads by 50 to 70%. So I took the shot of doing that. And for me, it was natural to start studying cloud and Kubernetes in order to be able to do it.
I've seen the implementation of Kubernetes and Spark quite often now because we tend to take Kubernetes as the resource manager for Spark, and it manages well resources rather than classical ones such as Mesos and Yarn or something like that. Right?
If you want, I can add more about that. Actually, if you use classical Hadoop managed clusters in the cloud, like EMR in Amazon or Dataproc for Google, so the cloud providers advise you to use transient clusters for your workload. So basically, you have to create the cluster, do your job, and then kill the cluster. And you know that by the time you are ramping up the cluster and shutting it down, so you are going to pay for that. And that is a cost that is not bringing you value. On the other hand, when you use a Spark, a Kubernetes managed cluster, so Kubernetes does the orchestration for you. You have just to create your driver and executive pods. You run what you want to run. And then when your job finishes, the resources are dynamically and smartly allocated to other Spark workloads or any other workloads in your Kubernetes cluster.
Exactly. That's interesting.
Maybe to scale down.
So yeah, exactly. So it comes from a need for specific need with your day-to-day work. So you judged that, okay, I need to go towards Kubernetes.
That's one aspect of it. And as I told you in the beginning when I introduced myself, initially I did not come from a computer science background. So for me, studying Kubernetes was an opportunity for me to push myself beyond my limits. I mean, when you study Kubernetes, you will figure out your weaknesses. For example, I figured out that I needed to work out my Linux knowledge, my shell scripting knowledge, my Docker. I had to go back to the basics regarding containerization. Why is it useful? How does it work? The Linux namespaces. I mean, I went back to the fundamentals. And for me, studying a certification is not only about getting the certification, which is interesting, by the way, because you have industry respected, certifications, and you gain some credibility. But for me, the most important part is the learning journey, because it will help you discover dark corners of knowledge. I mean, aspects that you didn't know, and it helps you acknowledge your weaknesses and working them.
Yeah, cool. And that's actually I'll broaden the question for you, Walid, and say, what would be the added value of getting certified? Meaning that, okay, as Shuaib, because Shuaib stated a good point in here, because I'm not going to be getting a certification just to get the certificate, but rather it's about the learning journey, right? So meaning going towards the fundamentals, and that's something for during our live shows or episodes that we've done, we've always either the team, either me or Abftah or Madiha or even Ajman, we focus on that. We always tell people we should always focus on fundamentals. So, but in here, what would be the added value? Why get certified, and what would be the added value? Is it to get noticed and have a foot at an interview, for example, or something like that? Because there was actually a good study from Learn Kates, I believe, and
Yes.
they had something about that. So what do you think about that, Walid?
You said it. So basically, you can abbreviate it in the learning journey. The best thing, if you are really targeting certifications, you have to make sure that you are targeting it for the learning journey. You're not targeting it for achieving the paper, because the paper is worthless at the end of the day. What is worth is that you learn, you broaden your scope, you broaden your context of knowledge. As Shuaib said, he didn't have that much knowledge earlier. Why? I don't think so, because basically he studied data science, he studied machine learning, so it's very easy for him to study computer science. But he was right. So, for example, for K8S certification, it's good to have Linux knowledge. It's good to have shell scripting, Python scripting. It's good to have networking. It's good to have web services knowledge. So going back to the question, why certify? Sometimes I ask why not to certify, because basically, do you really need certification? Not really, okay? But you need certification if you need to have a systematic way to earn a skill, to earn knowledge, especially certifications that are designed by vendors. They have a scope, they have context, they have a certain path that you can walk through. So they help you have a broad base of the specific knowledge, be it foundational or be it professional. Also, sometimes it's required by employer. If you are working for a consultancy, like Kubernetes certified service provider or Kubernetes certified service trainer, they need three employees to be certified in a certain certifications for them to provide their services. The same as with AWS partners. If you are an AWS partner, you need and depending on the tier, you have to have a certain number of certified AWS engineers. The other thing, sometimes it's for junior engineers. It's a way to complement their experience. They don't have experience yet, but it's a way to tell the employee, look, I can learn. I am a self-learner. I have an initiative to learn, and I can understand, and I can pass exams easily. And basically, whatever I have gained in this certification is worth like 1 year or 2 years of working skills. Of course, the best thing is to contribute to a project or participate in a project or show a hands-on experience using GitHub or using meetups like this one, collaborating in the community or building with the community, something like that. But that's the main reasons for certifications, that it could be to get you into the door for employment, or to be part of a certified partner or trainer, or basically to find a systematic approach to gain the skills and knowledge required. For example, if I want to do a service mesh, I don't know anything about service mesh. So maybe I should target service mesh certifications that will highlight to me what path should I start with, what's the fundamentals, and each step on the road, instead of going like blindly.
Yeah, thank you, Walid, for this clarification. I wanted to add something, if I may. So, unlike other vendor certifications, the Kubernetes certifications are hands-on. So, during the exam, you will be having access to actual clusters, and you will be building stuff. You will be running containers, editing deployments, and creating services. So, it's hands-on. It's not just a multiple choice questions that you can dump and rash. So the learning journey part and getting hands-on is very essential, and it's really fulfilling, technically speaking. I mean, when I studied for the I mean, this is a personal anecdote. When I studied the CK8S certification, one of my colleagues who were working for my customer, they saw how much I was rapid in using the kubectl CLI, and they've told me, how long have you been using Kubernetes? And when I told him it's been only a month, he did not really believe me, because and I told him that the certification track helped me a lot to get hands-on and know the shortcuts, etc., etc.
Yeah. Well, it for me, actually, about certification, it's about the framework in terms of learning, because it brings in that discipline sometimes and so on, rather than roaming around a lot of resources. And also it brings in, I would say, it's like a booster shot, if I may call it like that, with a framework. This is what you need to learn, and so on. But of course, it's about the learning journey, meaning that you should go beyond the certification scope as well. So since this episode is more, it's not, I mean, it's not for broad certification, but rather for CNCF. If you can give like a brief definition of what is CNCF actually. One of you, it's just one answer, and we can move on.
CNCF is the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. It's a foundation created by the Linux Foundation. So sometimes people confuse, because the CNCF looks like bigger than Linux, but the Linux Foundation is the one that is creating it. But it's not the only foundation that was created by the Linux Foundation. There are so other many, like the security, like the service mesh, and others. So it is a non-profit organization, and what is the role of it? The role of it is to advance cloud-native technology, to make it easier and accessible, and evolve the technology. It started with the donation of Kubernetes by Google to the Linux Foundation. That's how it started in 2015. And it grew very fast. Everybody know the landscape of the CNCF and how big it is. So the CNCF, one of the things that it needs to do is to spread awareness about Kubernetes and the ecosystem around it, the cloud-native ecosystem. How can it do this? Through training, the certification roadmap. So the certification is to make sure that the enterprise have enough qualified people that can run the Kubernetes and its ecosystem and the platforms around it. And for the companies, basically to ensure that they will have high quality, calibered, tested people that can basically do the job. So CNCF is very sold into providing a training program that provides high quality training, because that's how it can bridge between the employees and the employers, the enterprise and the individuals. Also, it have other certifications, such as the Kubernetes Certified Service Provider for consultants and for resellers, the Kubernetes Certified Trainer for training, and just recently for telecom, something called CMP. They just released it on the KubeCon 22 in Europe, in Valencia, just last week. It's in beta, but it's basically for telecom providers to make sure that they can integrate with each other and stuff like that. Going back to the exams, there will be more exams, there will be more training. For example, the KCNA, the Kubernetes and Cloud Native Associate, is actually a multiple choice, and it covers 40% of it to 50% of it covers Kubernetes, but 60% covers the ecosystem. What kind of ecosystem? You have Kubernetes. What next? You might need to have CI/CD. You might need to have something called GitOps. What is GitOps? What is CI/CD? what is a service mesh, and all these terms and terminology and technologies. And not everybody is technical when they work with Kubernetes. There are sales, there are basically people around that are non-technical positions. So the KCNA provides for non-technical people also the breadth, not the depth of the ecosystem. There is a recent one, the Prometheus one, which is mostly for monitoring. It's also multiple choice. It will be multiple choice. It's going beta now. So we will not be able to see it until end of June as a GA. And there will be more. I mean, if you look at other vendors, they are providing more certifications, be it free or non-free.
I believe since the ecosystem of Kubernetes, the CNCF is growing, and we're starting to see more graduate and more stable projects coming in. So that's for sure bringing in more certifications around it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is another thing that
Yeah,
the
yes.
CNCF provides, the technical rudders. There's the TOC. I forgot what it stands for, but it's basically a committee that looks after the promotion of projects from sandbox to incubation to graduations. And also they create the rudders, like for storage, for service mesh and stuff like that. So they can compare the technologies and how mature they are. And one role they do is they cannot, the TOC is like, I think there are 11 members. So they get assisted by what we call technical advisory group, tags. And there are other groups, special interest groups like security. Actually, security now is actually a tag now. And there are other working groups. So it's very extensive ecosystem and it's like 700 million now developers, part of this system, part of this community, huge community.
Yeah. I believe so. You have spoken about KCNA, PCA, and PCA. KCNA, which is Kubernetes certified, Kubernetes is
Cloud
Cloud
Native.
Native Associate,
Associate.
Cloud Native Associate, and PCA, which is Prometheus Certified Associate. And of course, well, for today at least, we are going to be talking about KCNA, CKA, and CKAD, and CKS. So, and you have brought some points around that, meaning KCNA, as in it is a multiple choice question. And let's say my question would be, because you have brought that point, would be, who is it destined to? Is it, because I tend to have this question as well, should I take the KCNA, for example? And so, meaning, who is the target in here, and who should pass that certification?
Shoaib?
Shoaib, you can go ahead if.
Actually, I mean, I did not pass the KCNA, so I would prefer to pass this to Walid.
Okay.
Yeah.
The ball is back in my grounds. Okay, so the KCNA, I was part of the SME team that created the KCNA, but then it was mostly managed by Kati Kamenji. And it is mostly for the non-technical people, or for basically beginners to the Kubernetes ecosystem. So it is the first step towards certifications. If you want to understand what is the Kubernetes ecosystem and the cloud native system in general, it would be your first certification. And it's very, very, so it's not deep, it cannot be deep, but there are some questions that are deep. So it expects that you have at least 3 to 6 months hands-on on Kubernetes, like on scheduling, like on the core skills of CKA or CKAD. So you know what a deployment is, you know what a replica set is, you know basically the main object around the pod, you know the main object around CI/CD, you know what is a GitOps workflow look like, and what it consists of, and what are the principles of GitOps, and what are the principles of deployment, rolling deployment, and things like that. It could be for sales, it could be for marketing, it could be for product managers, where they don't need to delve deep into the subject, but they need to have the breadth of the subject. So if somebody says Flux or Argo CD, they know that, okay, these are two tools for GitOps or for CD, and they know probably the general differences between them. I recommend highly the KCNA for beginners. And there is a good video from 14 hours video from our friend AWS community hero Andrew Brown from Canada on Free Code Camp. And he has a practice test also, he and his team on Udemy, 2 practice tests. And if somebody needs more support, he has his own company, ExamPro, where they have flash decks, and they have lots of support in terms of questions, in terms of how to go about the exam, how to study it, and how to do it in a very systematic and very deep way to learn more, not just basically whatever is in the curriculum.
Yeah, if you can share with us, Walid, this so that we can share it with everyone, of course.
Yeah, so I created the draft blog. I haven't finished the blog yet, but it has the main component, like what is in the KCNA. So it's this is the first time I use Hashnode today. I just used it today, like 4 hours before the broadcast.
Okay.
And it's Markdown, so I don't think I can go wrong with Markdown.
Yeah, sure. Perfect.
So it has, I mean, let me share, if I can share the screen. So basically, this is the blog. What I try to do in this blog, I can understand the argument against certification. And we agreed that the certification is just part of the learning journey. And there are so many companies, so many cloud-native companies, cloud-native providers, cloud service providers that provide free content. For example, Civo, which is a cloud provider based on K8S. They have the Cube Academy, the Civo Academy. They have so many good videos. VMware have Cube Academy. We wish them the best of luck after this Brocade requisition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, things are, I don't know. I hope they keep contributing.
New era. Let's.
No, I hope, I mean, this is a question that will they be still contributing to open source, to the training? They have a program, a weekly program, the TGIK, where you can
TGIK, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, where
thank God for Kubernetes, yeah.
Thank God it's Kubernetes, yeah, every Friday.
It's Kubernetes, yeah.
Amazon also have skill finder where you can find lots of container and Kubernetes courses, and you get badges. So instead of getting a certification, you get badges, and you can show these badges in your LinkedIn or your social network profiles. Google have something called Quick Labs. They have changed it to something called Cloud Skill Boost recently. IBM have something called Kubernetes Learning Bat and other bats. Kasten, they have very nice badges. If you look at the Kasten badges, they are really nice. But this is not our subject. There is lots of other vendors. If our subject is basically the KCNA. So the KCNA, there is Andrew Brown, and I have the link here. If you can share the blog with the other audience.
Yeah, I did share it, yeah.
Okay, so basically they can see the blog here, and the Udemy practice question, they are here. I have created the GitHub for the resources for KCNA. It's not really fully populated yet, but our friend from the AWS community builders, Muhammad Abu Bakr, he have a better one, which is I shared it also on the blog. So KCNA, if you just watch the 14 hours and you try to practice a little bit, the basics, and where can you practice? You can, Katacoda is going to be terminated. There is one site which is Katacoda. Let's see. So this is a good site to practice containers or any container technology related. But the problem, you can see that it's going to be closed on June 15. So what's the option? The option is Killer
Coda. Yeah.
Killer Coda by our friend Kim, who's responsible for killer.sh. And if you go to Killer Coda, you'll see that he has already CKA Playground, CKS, and CKAD. And if you go a little bit below, you find our friend, CNCF ambassador, Sayam Batak. And this is another thing. You might not, maybe it's better for you to get an ambassador with CNCF or with a vendor like HashiCorp or AWS Community Builder. Basically, you get the ambassador or the specific vendor community program that recognizes people that are leading in the community. And this way, basically, companies will know that you're somehow special. So, for example, here Sayam, he has lots of scenarios, and he's moving lots of scenarios from Katakoda to here. So the question was, how can I do the KCNA? It's mostly the Andrew Brown. Yeah. And as you can see, it's 14 hours. And he did it, and his team. Yeah, and Andrew Brown is a very nice guy. He did also the icons. He saw that the icons needs to be brushed up. So he contributed a free set of icons to the CNCF.
Perfect. Cool. So I believe we have now an idea about who should be certified, and I believe if someone wants to like dip a toe, I would say, in the world of cloud native in general, they should be starting with the KCNA. Do you think, Shuaib, if you wanted to way before taking the decision on taking the CK and CKAD, would have you taken this KCNA first just to have an idea?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, I did not know about KCNA before this talk. So I'm learning a lot during this lounge, Observation Lounge. So thank you, Walid, for that. And I think it would have been very, very, very helpful because I am a top-down person. Before starting something, I would love to have a helicopter vision in the beginning to know about the whole system, the purpose of the system, before studying and practicing some components in particular. Yeah, that's something that would have been very insightful. So I would have said to the previous version of me, go for KCNA before studying Kubernetes. Yeah, that would be very helpful. By the way, I had a question, Walid, for you. Is the Killer Coda are the Killer Coda playgrounds free, or they are?
Yes, they are free, and
nice.
So I created some Katakoda scenarios, for example, for CKS, but I couldn't finish them because basically they charge you. You have to be part of an organization, and you have allowed time. If you reach this allowed time, if you reach this threshold, you cannot create any more scenarios. You have to wait. But Killer Coda is actually allowing us to create content, and this is another good thing about Kim. So Kim was the first one to get CKS material out into Udemy.
Yep.
And he's the first one to do killer.sh, the practice exam for CKA, for CKAD, and usually they are tougher. And and he has already lots of scenarios in his Medium blog. So basically, he's keep producing content freely. And Kim is a very awesome person when it comes to content sharing and learning. As we said, it's a learning journey. So basically, his scenarios is how can you learn more about the subsystems. So in CKA, about the administration, about the components that make Kubernetes. CKAD, about the components that make the application. CKS, about how you control and manage and govern security.
Yeah.
So for KCNA, it's more broader thing, like bit about Kubernetes, bit about Flex or CI/CD and so on, right? So that you can have a broader view, and that's it. So that we don't stay a lot on this certification. Just two things. One about the questions. I mean, how does the grading go? Is there like a weight on each question, and is the question are linked?
So basically, there is a categories. I'm trying to get the categories. I'll get it on screen. Just a second. Share. So I'll get it. I don't know why I get the Chinese version of it. Okay. I get the Chinese website for some reason. Okay, here it is. So can you share my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so basically there are domains and competencies. And as you can see, the Kubernetes fundamentals, which will be actually overlapping with the CKA, with the CKAD, are here also. So Kubernetes fundamentals are around 46%. And what are they? what are Kubernetes resources? Resources like what? Like a pod, like a deployment. What is the Kubernetes architecture? Like the control plane, the API server, the scheduler. What is the Kubernetes API? It's the same. Kubernetes API and Kubernetes resources is basically the same. So the pod is basically an API at the end of the day. But here also it could mean the CRDs, so that you are aware that you can extend Kubernetes and there are something called CRDs and how to get them and stuff like this. And of course, I mean, you cannot have Kubernetes without containers. And there are really tricky questions about containers. You really need to know your containers well before doing this exam. And scheduling, which is the most important thing, because Kubernetes is an orchestration scheduling system. And then we come to the orchestration, the scheduling. So the runtime, the different runtimes, Katacoda versus Cryo versus Docker, and Docker. We know already that the Docker shim has been deprecated. Security, how do you care about security? Like the bot security policy, the bot security admission now instead of it, the networking, the network policy is the service mesh. So even here, you can see service mesh. So expect a question about STO, expect a question about Linkerd, or expect a question, why do you need the service mesh, like for observability and stuff like this? And of course, the storage. So storage, and when it comes to orchestration, that means that we might worry about affinity, we might need to worry about where the storage is allocated, and what kind of storage is it, what access modes and stuff like that. The cloud-native architecture. So the term cloud-native architecture, this is, you have to be careful with this one. This is where I failed, by the way. So I got 90% at this exam. I am an SME, and I got 10. I didn't really get the full mark. And why? Because the cloud-native architecture, the definition between Microsoft and between CNCF are a little bit different. What is auto-scaling? What is serverless? How do you do governance like OBA and stuff like this? What's the roles and personas that are already there, like RBAC and operators versus developer versus security? What kind of open standards you have, like CRI, CNS, and all these standards that govern. And cloud native observability, which is 8%, which will overlap with the Prometheus exam. So when you are studying for these exams, I think that you should really put in mind that, okay, if you are going to really do the exams, not just basically study them, make sure that you are studying not just for this exam. So if you're studying for observability, okay, I can do the KCNA observability, but I make sure that I have the basic and the foundation to go for the Prometheus exam, because there are lots of things that are overlapping. Application delivery.
Take advantage for about the overlapping between certification as well.
Yes, like network policy, you will find it in every exam except maybe the Prometheus one. Cloud native application delivery, this is very fundamental, the delivery fundamentals, the rolling update, things like that, GitOps, and what is the difference between CI/CD, CI and CD, and what frameworks and tools and solutions are out there. So yes, so basically, if somebody focuses on the Kubernetes fundamental, he can get 46%. I forgot what's the best mark for this one. I think it's 63 or something. Anyway, so basically, if you focus on the Kubernetes fundamentals and container orchestration, you get most of the exam. If you fail the cloud native application delivery, cloud native observability, you might still pass. So, and this is where the CKA, the first three ones, this is where the CKA and CKAD are. So studying for this and studying then later for the CKA and CKAD, there's a big overlap.
All right, cool.
And you get in the exam the percentage of the questions. So basically in the exam, it will tell you that this question has like 2% weight or 7% weight. And usually the last questions are the ones that have higher weights.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yes, Maria.
Yeah. So we've been talking about the KCNA certification, which is like mostly about the fundamental of Kubernetes. So now we'd love to talk about the CKAD certification, which is maybe the next easiest certification to pass. Actually, I'm interested in this certification because I've been preparing to it. When I stopped, it's been a while, but now I started again. So for you, to whom this certification, like the CKAD certification, is destined to?
Yeah, I can take this one if you want,
Yeah.
Walid.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So CKAD stands for Certified Kubernetes Application Developer. So it's basically destined to people who are developing multi-service applications, people who are building containers and shipping them to the cloud or whatever. And it is, the easiest certification for people who come from development and machine learning, data science developer background. I have heard people who come from system administration background who
Yes.
told me that it was harder for them CKAD than CKA. I honestly found CKAD way easier than CKA.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
if you want, I can share my screen to talk a little bit about the
Sure.
curriculum. So what's in it? Just tell me when you see my screen. Yeah. So entire screen share. Yeah, perfect. So 20% of the CKAD is about application design and build. So you need to know how to define, build, and modify container images, understand jobs and cron jobs for, things that will be happening in a scheduled fashion. Understand multi-container pods, because basically a pod is not necessarily a single container. You can have many design patterns, such as the sidecar pattern, the init container, etc., etc. And you need also to understand the when you should use persistent volumes, when you want to persist things, and ephemeral volumes. 20% of the exam is going to be about application deployment. So we need to learn how to use Kubernetes primitives to implement common deployment strategies such as blue, green, and canary. And this supposes that you have a slight DevOps and CI/CD knowledge in order to be able to do that. We need to understand what is particular about Kubernetes deployments and how to perform rolling updates. And this is, by the way, one of the key things that makes you need a container orchestrator, actually. When I took the exam, I did not have Helm as a requirement. Apparently, they have updated it. And for those who don't know Helm is a layer above Kubernetes, a layer of abstraction above Kubernetes. And basically, today, most of open source softwares and projects, they have their Helm packages. And basically, a Helm package is a predefined set of Kubernetes resources that you can just get them up and running with a Helm start command. So then you have 15% of the exam about observability and maintenance. So you need to understand the Kubernetes API and why some APIs are deprecated. So health checks, logs, using the kubectl.f.logs in order to -f logs in order to see what happened in your pod or in your containers to debug things. Then you have 20% services and networking. So you need to have a basic understanding of networking in general, and then the network policies resources in order to manage the access to your containers and services, etc. 25% of the exam is about the security, the configuration, and the application environment. So Walid talked about the possibility of extending Kubernetes and creating CRDs, which are basically custom Kubernetes resources that companies can create depending on their use cases. You need to understand how to use config maps, secret service accounts, and security contexts, basically to pass configurations and things and control the capabilities of your containerized applications. If you want, I have written a blog. I have about how to
I shared your blog as well.
Cool. So this is I have written an overview of the exam, the topics, and then I have personally used this training, the Mamshad Manambeth
Yeah.
CKAD
This is the
training.
one that I'm using too, actually.
Yeah, I think this is a self-sufficient resource. I mean, if you do the hands-on exercises and if you
In
follow
CodeCloud.
along the videos, in CodeCloud, that's gonna be perfect. There is also the possibility, to use videos from free Codecamp for people who cannot afford this kind of trainings, and you can use like Minikube or KubeADM in order to run your own cluster and just play with it. I think it is a very fulfilling experience to configure your own cluster. So there are also some GitHub repos in which you have CKAD exercises that are very, very, very similar to the exam. So they are in the blog. So for people who are interested, you can use those. This is a book I recommend, Kubernetes in Action. That's one of the books that I personally used in order to have insights about Kubernetes. And then in the end, so I have written some useful tips and tricks that people can use in order to write their commands faster in the exam. For example, using the LESK instead of kubectl. That's very helpful. And then you have the short form of the resource's name. For example, as I said in the beginning, this is a hands-on exam. So you will be having access to a terminal, and you will be having access to actual Kubernetes cluster, and you will be building modifying resources in it. So you can write PO instead of point, deploy instead of deployment, SVC instead of service, and I think config map, so CM instead of config map, and knowing those can be very helpful. And basically you have to run against time. So the exam is about running against time, so you really need to get hands-on. And also, one last advice, if I may, is to know your documentation. You have to learn how to browse the documentation. So personally, for example, for the CKS, I have bookmarked all the documentation parts that I have identified as essential for the exam. That's also a possibility if you want. And that's all for me.
Shuaib, you talked about time. For how many hours do we have for the CKAD?
That's a very good question. So I'm not sure, to be honest. I think it's
2 hours.
2 hours. Yeah,
2 hours,
okay.
right?
2 hours, I guess.
Before it was 3 hours, I guess, right?
The CKA was 3 hours before,
Yeah.
but now it's 2 hours. So before, my recommendation was to do the CKA first, because you have 3 hours and you have around 17 to 21 questions. Now, some people get less, some people get more. It depends on your luck. And the last questions are the questions that have the highest weight. So, and you have a retry. So basically, as I said in the beginning, the CNCF are really interested that you pass the exam, are really interested that you have the skills. So they make it easy for you to retry again. They don't have a limit. You can retry the next day. I have a friend that retried actually within a week, and she failed again because she didn't really figure out why did she fail the first time. Okay, she is a very good administrator. She's very well known in the Saudi community. But basically, if you fail, know exactly why you failed before you retry the exam, and you have 1 year before you redo the exam again.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
You reminded me.
You
reminded me of a very important point. If I'm not wrong, actually, killer.sh has partnered with the CNCF, and now, I mean, I did not have this possibility before. I have paid for killer.sh separately for my CKA exam, for instance. But now, when you purchase the certification exam, you have access to 2 trials in killer.sh. You have access to an exam simulator, and you should not feel demotivated if you fail the practice killer.sh exam, because it's way tougher than the real exam, and that's on
Definitely.
purpose. They set the standards higher, and in order to give you, for example, my feedback for the CKA, when I took the simulator, I had 75 over 100, 75%, and in the actual exam, I just scored 93%. So just to tell you, I mean, if you start having beyond 65% in the killer.sh, you can consider yourself ready for the exam, for the actual exam.
Yeah. Curiosation would be a good way to, I would say, test yourself against time as well, because even though they give you, I believe, 2 hours, but they have like around 25 questions or something like that, and they are pretty long and pretty hard. But my question would be like, what would be the strategy to take for CK80? Because if I had to give my own feedback, I would say CK80 is it felt at least much longer than the CKA. So because you have to deal with a lot of manifests, right? So what would be the strategy in here to score well in CK80 and or at least get the exam?
Walid, do you want to take it, or I can? I mean, I think both our feedbacks are interesting. Do you want to start, or?
I'll start. So the CNCF is making it easier. They have before that you have to have okay. So first thing, when you practice, make sure that you practice on the right Kubernetes version. So the exam basically gets updated every 6 months, and the Kubernetes version gets updated every 3 months. So make sure that if the current exam is on 123, that your lab or you're practicing playground in Killer Coda or wherever it is actually the same version, because there are little differences and there are things that are duplicated.
Sorry, Walid, I'm gonna jump on this one as well. For practicing, what would be the best way to do practices? I mean, yes, you mentioned Killer Coda as playgrounds. What else can we like use? Vagrant and bring up our own cluster, for example? Do we need that for CK80, for example? Because for CKA it is administrator, so probably that's something else. But for CK80, do we need to build up our own cluster, for example? What would be the playgrounds that we can work with?
Not really, but bringing up a K3D cluster or kind of cluster is very easy, and it's less like than 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and it's good to have your own cluster. Bring it up, bring it down, and do your test and stuff like this, because Killer Coda basically will shut down after 2 hours or 4 hours. If you have a Cloud Guru, also they have some, especially the premium subscription, which is now actually called Pluralsight, I believe. Pluralsight bought them. They have a playground also. And they have lots of good exercises out of the box with the very written scenarios. The problem with the
can you share with us? Can you share with us this last one?
A Cloud Guru.
A Cloud Guru. Okay.
Yeah.
So any playgrounds or resources that we can use like for free? Because for Cloud Guru,
Cloud Guru is not for free. Yeah, you have to pay.
Yeah, I know. That's what I asked.
Around $400.
Yeah,
which is not really bad. I mean, with all the courses they have in AWS, in Google, in DevOps, and I mean, it's fantastic now, especially now when they are joining forces with Pluralsight. I mean, the material there is more than enough.
Because this if I can take this question in here, how hard is it to build a kube cluster for beginners? Because for people who wants to learn Kubernetes, and either administrators or developers, they don't know, do they need to build a cluster or not? So what would be the best way? So for now we have Killer Coda, but it has a limitation. We have some pay subscription models like.
It's not hard, and if they want to start with the managed with the managed service, so most of the managed service are not really free tier. So if you go, for example, for AWS EKS, it will not be free tier. So you have to pay, I think, for the cluster like 10 cents an hour or something like that. I forgot now. I should actually remember that, but I forgot.
I believe we can also go. You've mentioned K3D. We can also go with one which is the easiest, which is the check in the Docker desktop Kubernetes option, and we can have our Kubernetes to try stuff on
Yeah.
there.
Yes, I have in ASCII Cinema. I have actually a recording which is like less than 3 minutes of how bringing up a Kubernetes cluster using.
I'm sharing your screen, Walid.
Okay, thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't logged in for a long time, so let me log in. Try to find my login.
So do you want me to remove the share, maybe?
No, it's okay. I'm
That's okay.
using the other screen.
Okay, perfect.
So in the meantime, if you want, I think if you use tools like kubeadm, it's very easy. It's straightforward. I mean, it's really well documented. But if you, I mean, I think the most fulfilling experience is to set it up the hard way. You know, installing the binaries your own and doing everything your own. And I mean, that would be the last thing to do in order to make sure that you really are able to deep dive into it. In the meantime, until you so you are logged in, right?
Yes, but basically the screen is very small here. So no, the screen is very small.
Maybe you
basically for CKD, I mean, bringing up a K3D cluster using a bash one-liner shell script, or bringing a kind cluster as part of the quick install documentation is very easy. Kind, you can do lots of things. I mean, VMware have a GitHub repo where you can do different CNIs, where you can do different cluster components to it. So getting to know kind and being part of your stack, of your local stack, it's nice. And as Karim mentioned, there is the Docker desktop, there is the Rancher desktop, and Red Hat released Podman desktop, because some people, they don't want to go with Docker desktop with the monthly subscription. So you have two other options. You have the Rancher desktop, or you have the Podman desktop. I haven't used them, but they are different ways, and they can work on the Mac now also. As far as I know, I should try it actually. I just have a new Mac, so I should try it. Going back, the version is very important. And the important thing for me, the CKD, that everything ends as a pod. And the pod basically is one or more containers. And if you know containers, if you know especially Docker Compose, the directives is actually, you can map them back to the container. So for example, how you mount the volume, how you want to environment variables set and stuff like this. You can, if your container knowledge is solid, your pod knowledge will be solid. And around the pod, then basically how you can create a replica set, how can you create a deployment, how can you create a cron job, and how can you run a job from a cron job, how can you create a job from a cron job, and things like that. So
basically, for the concepts, at least we should target the handbook and get a hand of what's mentioned in there, and get a grasp of it, right?
Yeah, there is one GitHub, I forgot the name of the gentleman, that has lots of scenarios, like use cases and stuff like this, that can get you trained. And also, if you go to Kubernetes IO, the most important thing in all these exams is the concept and the tasks. I can do K8S IO. You can do K8S IO for a quick. And documentation. And when you select the documentation, you have to select the version. So for example, now it's version 124, but the exam is still on version 123. So make sure that you select the right documentation for the right version. Okay. Now I go to documentation. So my documentation is version 123. Okay, I can try Kubernetes here. There is some walkthroughs and stuff like that. If you go here, if you can see here on the left column, you see concept and tasks. Make sure that you do all tasks, okay? That's where the exam will come from. Usually it will come from the task with different permutations. So how to run a job, how to run applications. If we go to run applications, you see how to scale a stateful set, how to run a stateless application, specifying a disruption budget. This is new. I haven't seen this before, but that's good actually for the when you do updates and stuff like that. Okay, so there are updates to the documentation, which is good to know. So
actually, this is you can go.
Go ahead, Madiha.
I was about to say this is something that is very interesting, especially if you are like following one specific courses. For instance, the Muhammad Mamshat one, and I'm not sure if it is updated to the latest K8S Kubernetes version, like. And then if you like are following these courses, you are like playing the exercises in kubectl, and then like for you, Shuaib, is it like a safe way to still follow in such courses, like especially with the updates that Kubernetes do?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, Code Cloud, they have a great team. They are frequently updating their content. I assume it's a safe way, but it is always better to go and check the latest documentations, at least the documentation of the version of Kubernetes of the exam. But I think doing Mamshat course and taking the practice exams in killer.sh, which are provided for free now since the partnership between killer.sh and CNCF, I think that's a very safe and a very standalone and it's a self-sufficient strategy. I wanted to go back, by the way, to the time management. That was a question that was open, but we did not answer. So on my side, what I do, I personally start with the no-brainer questions. I will start with the questions that I can do with a one-liner. Questions I am confident that I can do, and that doesn't need any effort from me, so that I get rid of those and I have my score. In general, these are low-weighted questions, and then I will go to the questions about the concepts that I master the most. For me, I will always start by things that I am confident. So no-brainer ones, and then concepts that I master, and then I will end up doing the hardest part. And for me, that's the best way to manage your time, because if you focus on hard questions and if you lose your time on hard questions, you will be feeling frustrated at the end of the exam, not being able to do one-liners because you will be tired. And you will not be able to do things that you would have been able to do if you started with them in the beginning.
So this is one strategy. My strategy is to do the hardest first, and the reason I'm opposite to Shuaib, and the reason why I do the hardest first, because I do my timing. So I do the hardest first and see if I can finish it within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes maximum. If I cannot, I'll leave it. I make a note of it. And the reason why, because what makes you waste your time is troubleshooting if you make something wrong, or if you don't figure how this should be done. When in early beta exams, there are lots of questions that you cannot really understand. The language is not really correct, or it's English is not our second language. Sometimes we fail to understand what they really mean. But with time, the language of the questions becomes better. So for the CKA, CKAD, and the KCNA right now, the language is better. But for early Prometheus, for example, it will be a little bit rough until they get all the feedback from the examinees that I didn't understand that question, or that question should be worded better, or something like that. So when you struggle with one question and leave it, if you cannot finish it within 3 minutes, leave it and come back to it later. When you come back to it later, you might have a different point of view. You might your mind is refreshed. Your mind works wonders, and you might have another questions that reminded you of something that you can do to solve this problem, because some of the questions are related, or some of the manifest can complement the other ones. So that's my strategy. My strategy is try to not make mistakes.
Yeah, I believe there is actually from my side, I can say I am a mix between both of you, because at times, and that's from my experience, is that I had some I would say not difficult but long questions with very low weight. So I was like, I'm not going to do this question right now. Go back to it if I still have time or not, because I was from my side as well. I was weighing the difficulty of the question, or at least the length in terms of time, with the weight in terms of grading that I had. And I still remember I had one which was a bit long, but with 4 or 2 or something like that. I was like, I'm not going to be taking a lot of time on that. I would rather go for 7% or 11% if there is not
So
some like that, and try to solve them as well.
yeah, Karim, your feedback made me think of a very good formula, if I may. So okay, so we can have 4 categories of questions. We can have
Yeah.
easy questions with high weight. So those I would do them definitely. Then you will be having easy questions with low weight. That's the second category I would go for. And then you can have hard questions with the high weights. I would try those. And the last ones would be the hard questions with low weight. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
As a priority.
So all in all, I would say quick wins, if we can agree both on that.
So we need to check on Mediha because she must have a different one.
Actually, I loved all your point of view, and I guess I will go in more with Karim. Yeah. Well,
Which is actually a mix between the two, right?
exactly. It's all
But
of it.
one way to make sure that you'll do it on time is not to make mistakes. And the way not to make mistakes,
Yeah.
practice. Muscle memory.
Yeah.
Memory.
And I want to emphasize a point that Walid said. If you spend more than 3 minutes on a question, you are doing wrong. You should directly move to another question. That's very important, because we can easily get absorbed by that question and get into the rabbit hole of debugging and troubleshooting and redoing things again. That's not a healthy thing to do. Just move forward and free your mind and think about it later.
Yeah.
That's very important, and that's the main reason people lose time and are unable to manage time on the exam.
And one reason why I was recommending CKA before CKAD for when it was 3 hours, the CKA exam questions are very short. It's very direct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But
exactly.
the CKAD exam, he will tell you a story. One developer working in this company, and his manager came to him and asked him to deploy this microservice and this microservice. And they will describe, for example, let's say that you want to use ambassador pattern. They will describe actually the ambassador pattern to you. So you don't even need to know what is the ambassador, what's the sidecar, and the different or proxy.
I'm not sure about your experience, but for me, for CKAD and CKA, I had a spare time for CKA. For CKAD, I believe I had two questions that I didn't have time to touch even.
So the first time I did the CKA was more questions than normal because it was a beta exam. And I love the beta exam because then you get exposed to more questions. I just want to get exams done. I'm hoping that I got into the Prometheus one. I didn't get any feedback. I filled the form, but I didn't really get any feedback. Then the second time I did the CKA, I never finish on time. I always finish basically, and I only have like a couple of minutes, so I cannot really review. But my colleagues, they have 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I have one colleague always finishes and he has plenty of time.
Yeah. For me, from my personal experience, I had spare time for CKA and CKAD, but not for CKS. CKS for me was
no way.
for me. I was just on time on CKS. It was just on time, and I wanted to add something. About which exam to start with, and this is really important. For me, with hindsight, I think if I have started with CKA, I would have been demotivated because there are many fundamental things that I did not know at the time. Being a data scientist, because as I told you, I was an electrical engineer before becoming a data scientist. And when I broke into data science, I only knew, how to code in Python, basic Linux knowledge, and Jupyter notebooks, and some machine learning and statistics. So I did not know about security. I did not know about the public key infrastructure, the public-private key encryption, etc., etc. I did not know the fundamentals of networking, and I had to do a lot of hard work before being able actually to study for CKA. I mean, for people who come from developer, data engineer, data science background, I would still recommend CKAD because even though the scenarios are long, you don't require sysops and sysadmin knowledge. But for CKA, as I said, you need first to go back to the basics regarding networking, the public key infrastructure, security. And by the way, it's the same for CKS also to an extent. And actually, CKS. Yeah, say it again. Go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to just to notify you, Shuaib, about the audio. I believe there is a bit of noise in there.
Let me check. Is it better now?
Yes,
I believe so. Yeah.
Seems to be.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's it for you?
Yeah.
The problem with the CKS exam, in CKD exam, if you do a mistake, it's just a mistake for that question. If you do a problem on the CKS exam, you could basically break your cluster. So you have, I think, 8 clusters on that exam. And if you break the cluster, I don't know how many questions you will break. Because basically you are working with the API server, you are working with the scheduler, you are working with the control plane. So you have to be really careful that you don't really wreck your cluster, that you have a backup.
Yep.
Sorry. So now, from this this question, are you saying that the CKS, the questions are linked? Because from my experience for CKA, CKAD, you have, like, I believe 4 clusters, and you change the context, and that's something very important because
yes.
The reflex should be, once you read the question, take in the command they give you to change the context and apply it on your terminal, so that you know that you are working on the right cluster.
Yeah.
But now you added this information about CKS.
Yeah, I think
CKS more clusters.
Yes, actually, what Walid wanted to say is that in CKS you will be modifying, for example, the Cube API server YAML file, to modify parameters, to enable, some plugins, for example. And if you do it wrong, you won't be able to interact with your kubectl. Again, that's a problem. So before modifying the actual Kube API server YAML file, what I would do, and what I have done in the exam, is that I would copy paste the YAML file somewhere. I would edit it, and then when I am sure about the outcome of my file, I would just copy paste. Bring my modifications to the official clean codes, the YAML file, because as you said, you have 7 to 8 clusters or something like that, and if you break the cluster, so you will be enabled to solve the 3 or 4 questions that belong to that context, to that cluster.
Right, that's a good information. And you talked about the notepad. So from my experience, I believe you have a notepad within the like exam environment. So was that the notepad that you were working on, or were you using like a text editor within your terminal or something like that?
I've never used the notepad personally. I would have used yeah.
I did use the notepad, but sometimes the proctor basically wants to make sure that you clear your notepad before you finish the exam. So it depends on how tough the proctor is. So I find that if you are because you are using TMUC, by the way, in the exam, if you open another tab on TMUC and you have an editor, sometimes it's better. So in this editor, you can put the context or you can put the question number also. Because this is another mistake, that you don't change your context.
Yeah. So that's
But they
why
make it
that's
clear.
something. Yeah. So
The-
that's something. That's why I say when you read the question, either you answer it or not, change the context, because your mind is not there. You are focusing right, but sometimes some reflexes would not be there. So read the question, answering it or not, change the context, and then do the question.
Yeah, and actually, you know, Code Cloud, if I'm not wrong, if I'm not mistaken, they don't. I mean, when you do their mock exam, you don't have to switch contexts.
Nope.
If I'm not
No.
wrong, but for killer.sh, they are really emulating the exam conditions, and they will be having a one-line command that you can use to copy paste and to change your context. And I really advise people to do the killer.sh because it's very, very, very close to the exam conditions. The questions are even tougher, but this helped me a lot into having the reflex of changing my question, my context. Sorry, whenever I move to the next question.
It's very
Yeah,
clear
so-
now on the new user interface of the exam. It's very clear. One thing that I had, that I did my last exam, I think mid last year, the timer. They have changed the timer from digits to a bar. But I have complained against this, and I have complained against this to the exam team on KubeCon again, just in case it's still there.
It is still there. I mean, I have taken K8S last month.
Man,
No,
that's really bad.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. Do you have 10 minutes or 15 minutes, or I don't know?
Yeah, and exactly. I mean, it was for me very, very disturbing. Actually, I used another technique. Actually, in my wheelchair, I have. I mean, for people who don't know me, I use an electric wheelchair. I am physically disabled, and in my wheelchair, I have a small screen where I had the time, so that was very helpful.
that's
Yeah.
a good trick.
Yeah. Wait. Let's move actually to the CKA certification. I believe that you gave already many important information about this certification. But the question now is, what are like the technical prerequisites to this certification, like in comparison with the last one, which is the CKAD? What are the things that we need to know more for this one?
You need to break your cluster. So there is, if you watch, there is a cluster series by David Rocco, David Flanagan.
And actually, we were on the first episode ever. So
yeah. But basically, you will not have a very hard troubleshooting problems. But if you break your cluster while you are setting up your cluster scheduler, cluster API server, the controller manager, things like this, and what happens if I change this option? What happens if I change this parameter? What happens if I kill this pod? What happens if the image is not has a typo? So basically, the more problems you are exposed to, the more that you can solve problems faster. Even sometimes your typos during the exam. So basically, oh, I know what's this. I know why this image cannot be pulled. I know why this API server is not running. I know basically why is the daemon up or not. And I know which command to use better. Should I use kubectl describe or should I use kubectl get bots? Things like that. So basically, and by the way, the match is going to start in 1 minute. I don't know. I mean, I'm not into football, so it's
right.
Are you into football,
you mentioned actually. I hope we are not going to be losing some people from the audience due to the match. But you've mentioned breaking the cluster a lot. Is it that the concept that we need to be focusing on really, or should it be also spanning towards other stuff as well?
I always try to explore. I did a webcast with VMUG with Dan from Spain, and it was related to the CKA troubleshooting. So the way I learn troubleshooting is by trying to break things, because when you practice, I remember what I said, practice. If everything goes smooth and you have a problem at the exam, that's not good. I rather have problems before the exam than in the exam. So how can you have problems before the exam? You try to simulate things. You try, okay, so this is the command. What if I add another dash? What if I add another option? What if I do a typo in the image name? What if I do a typo in the number of replicas? And how can I fix it? Things like this.
Yeah, so I agree completely with you, Walid, on this point. And actually, there is a concept that is called the tutorial hell. So there are a lot of people who are able to do a lot of tutorial and limited tutorial, and they are chaining tutorials, but they feel that they are unable to start actual projects, getting hands-on, doing things that are not guided. So breaking things and breaking your cluster and troubleshooting and being able and getting trained on how you analyze the events, analyze the logs, analyze the exceptions that you have, that is fundamental, not only for the certification, but for your day-to-day job.
Yes.
And I personally learned way more from things that did not work than from very smooth workshops and tutorials. So workshops are good to get you hands-on and give you a quick start, but the best learning experience is from either having problems or simulating and creating actually the problems. And if you want, in order to ask to add another thing about the prerequisites of CKA versus CKAD, I think CKA assumes a deeper knowledge of the different components of your cluster, the role of the control plane, the role of the worker nodes, the role of etcd, the communication between all of these, the PKI infrastructure, the certifications, the public key, the CA, the certificate authority, this kind of stuff. More knowledge about networking, more knowledge about security. So I think so basically it's just to sum it up: system administration, security, networking, and very deep knowledge of the different components of Kubernetes. And actually, what I would recommend also is to interact with the cluster using merely the API, like curl or something, instead of interacting with kubectl, which is very convenient. I would use curl in order to be conscious that at the end of it, it's an API that you can use and that you can interact with,
Yeah. And do you think that, for example, if I pass the CKA, so from both of your answers, I believe we are saying that the CKAD is more towards developers, right? So meaning that the people that are going to be dealing with Kubernetes in a more kind of writing the manifest for their applications and so on. And for the CKA, it's more for the ops admins and so on. So does an admin need to have the CKAD as well? Do you think that? Yeah.
From my day-to-day job, I need to basically liaise with the developers. So I am an operator. Exactly. I work in operations. And how do you get the image, especially if you are in corporate settings, how to get the image through a proxy, how to get it to the internal registry, and how to write the image URL in your manifest. So I had a conversation with the CNCF regarding the naming of the CKAD. I don't really believe it's for developers. It's like deployment management. It's not really developing a Golang or a Java or basically. Yes, the first objective is how to create a Docker file, but that's it. Basically, not even that much.
Yeah,
in CKS, maybe
you don't need coding.
Ahead.
Yeah, actually, you don't need to know how to code to pass the exam.
Yes, it's basically YAML. It's all YAML. You need to be YAML engineer.
Yeah, exactly. And I would believe that if you get the CKA, just go for the CKAD right away, because you don't have probably you would be adding like CRDs or something like that you should have also went through when you are preparing for this CKA anyways, because of the overlapping.
Exactly.
So
I think there is like 60 to 70% of overlap between CKAD and CKA. And if you
Yes.
have your CKA, you will be able to pass your CKAD with very small effort.
Yep.
Yes. So the difference between CKA and CKAD can be in the state. So there is not much state on the CKA as it is on the CKAD. I mean by state is the resistant volume claims, and config maps and secrets, and environment variables. Also the multi-containers. So the multi-containers is more prevalent on the CKAD than the CKA. But as a general, I mean, if you are going to deal with Kubernetes, you need to know the resources. You need to know the API. So being an administrator or a developer, you need to know the APIs. Now, the CRDs are actually more prevalent on the CKS. I have in the CKS, you might need to work with some custom CRDs because, yeah, but on
I believe there is this for the security operators, right?
For example, yes. For example, OBA or for the gatekeeper, it's a CRD, how you edit it, basically. So you need to know some custom CRDs that are part of the operators and stuff like that. But for CKAD, most likely just getting or finding a certain CRD, not really editing them or modifying them.
All right. So, and I believe the format is the same as the CK80, right? So both of them, they have the same format. CKA and CK80, they have the same format, and I believe that goes the same for the CKS. So meaning practice questions with weighted questions, and also spread across so for CKA, CK80, I believe it's 4 clusters, and for CKS it's 8 clusters.
Yeah.
It is on the handbook, I think, or in the FAQ. I forgot which one.
The handbook, I believe, it has the stuff about that. And I'm asking this question specifically about cluster, because I believe, for example, when we are working with CKA, there is network policies, and that goes the same for CKS. So, and in here, when we are trying to do certain training by ourselves, like we've mentioned earlier, or bringing up our own cluster with kubeadm, there is a factor in terms of choosing the right CNI, right? So if you can shed some light on that.
So the CNI is an add-on. So, and now the documentation doesn't have a third-party things, but that's the thing that Shuaib basically mentioned in the beginning, that you have to be familiar with the documentation. So where in the documentation that mentions that how to install the CNI, it's basically when you install high availability cluster. When you install high availability cluster in the part of the K8S documentation, if you look at it, it will tell you the URL for the installing basically the CNI. I think it was WeaveWork, I'm not sure, or Calico. It's not Flannel.
So that's also one of the things why I asked the question, because some of the CNIs doesn't have the capability for about implementing network policies. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what would be the best choice to go with?
So it's Flannel usually. Okay. So it's Flannel that doesn't have network policy. CKA will have a simple network policy, by the way. It will not have a very advanced one. CKAD maybe will have a little bit more, but in the CKS, you might need to do more than one network policy. You might need to do 2 or 3 network policies, and they are different in terms of their scope. Now, some of the questions, they are permutated. So Shuaib might see the question, but I might not see it. Shuaib might see the same question as mine, but he will see different requirement. Like, for example, I'm blocking port 80. He will see blocking port 8080. So they are playing with the questions in a certain way to make them look more, but they are permutated. And the funny thing I had is that the question was changed, but the deployment was not changed. So in the question, I have names that doesn't reflect what I had in the deployment, like the deployment saying XYZ, but the question was saying ABC. So how do I answer it? I answer it as the question, or I answer it as the... so I just took a guess, and I'm not sure if it was correct or not. I passed the exam anyway, so I really don't know. But the permutations are there. And for example, some people get a certain question in a certain category. I don't get it. I get it in a different category. For example, when Shaib was talking about Helm, I don't know anybody got Helm yet, but it would not be strange. Somebody will get it.
Yeah. So just I wanted to add something. I mean, if you are working for a consulting company and you want to stand good with your employer and help them maintain their Kubernetes partnership, so CKA is a good option also. And if you want to pass to take the CKS, actually CKA is a prerequisite. You can't take the CK Certified Kubernetes Security Specialist exam unless you have already passed the CKA, sorry.
And that's the only prerequisite for all the certificates, I believe. So CKA, CKAD don't have any prerequisites.
Yep.
Like in terms of having a certificate. But CKS, you need to have the CKA. Do you have any idea about the PCA? Do I have to have prerequisites for it?
Which one?
For
No, there is no
Prometheus?
prerequisite. No, nothing.
Okay.
Yeah,
The new
it's an associate exam, so it will not be really advanced.
Yep.
And it's multiple choice. And if you look at it, it looks really easy. It's basically the fundamentals of observability and stuff like this. And then there are some questions that go a little bit deep. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll see soon.
Do you know where are they when they are planning to launch it? PCA?
End of June, they said.
Okay.
They said we have to be ready by end of this month to do the exams or something like this, but I didn't receive anything. So maybe I'm not sure if I am in or I am out.
Okay,
Yeah,
always in
fine.
the CKA certification. About this one, do you have any other tips and tricks to pass the cert? Like I believe there are many common things that we should be aware to like pass correctly the certification.
Okay, I'm not sure if Shaib mentioned this or not, but the command kubectl example, what is it? Explain, kubectl explain.
Mm-hmm.
So how to create manifest from dry runs from explain. So basically how to find the fields and stuff like this faster. You can bookmark. You can bookmark the documentation. I never bookmark the documentation, but creating the manifest faster from a dry run or explain, knowing the fields from explain, that will help you a lot.
Yeah.
This is maybe common for all the certification, I believe, like to use the kubectl explain and stuff, dry run.
Yes.
I mean,
yes, and there is in the kubectl also the help when you do kubectl, for example, run deployment or create anything. Basically, you will find lots of examples already on the command. Some of these examples you can just copy it and change a little bit, and that will be your command to run the deployment or the whatever resource that you want to run.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to add something regarding explain. Thank you for bringing this out, Walid. So you have an option in the explain thing, which is -- recursive.
Yes.
So that's really, really, really useful, and it gives you all the fields and the subfields and the subfields of your YAML manifest.
When you do the grep option after the title.
Say it again, Madiha.
I told you it's when you grep after
you
the
can
title.
grab a specific field as in.
Yeah. When the recursive.
Yeah, actually, I would do a less pipe kubectl explain, and then I would be looking for things into the result, and it's really, really useful. And yeah, dry runs are really, really useful as well. I think many questions that in the exam can be solved with one-liners as well. I mean, we need to be able to get used to the. I mean, I always mix things up. I mean, I'm not sure if it is the imperative or the declarative way. Is it the? I mean, when you do it
It's
from
the
your
imperative. If you do
Yeah.
it from the command, it's imperative because
Yeah,
you didn't save it in Git. If it's not in Git, it's a gossip. It's not real.
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, many questions in the exam can be done in a one-liner in the imperative way. So we really should get used to that because it will help us gain a lot of time.
Yeah, it is the best way to do so when you do it the imperative way and you know the proper flags and so on just from reading the question. It saves you a lot of time, and at times you can mix it up with a dry run and change your manifest and go from there.
Yes. If you can share my screen.
Yes, and I shared your repo, Walid.
So in my repo, at the end, there is tips. And these tips are collected over time from other people, Heptio, from different resources. So again, you need to really be familiar with the documentation, especially the part that is concept and the part is tasks. And you need to know the kube control cheat sheet. There will be like examples out of cheat sheet, like they are, like if you need to handle JSON bat or something. There was Cheryl, I forgot her last name, Cheryl Hunk. She was working for the CNCF, and she did a demo in the last KubeCon regarding the CKS, or maybe the one before last. She did the demo in 2020 regarding the CKS, and her demo was, can you find the bots that has highest CPU? And some of the answers from the community was basically using JSON bat. So if you know JSON bat and if you know how to do the commands in the kube control cheat sheet, you can do really things like that faster. And we have some questions like that. Make sure that you know your API versions and you know your API resources. It's not an issue now because I told you that they will give you the header. Now they give you a manifest and they give you the header, and usually the header has the correct API version already in it. But it's good to know how to find the API version and how to know the API resources. Like, for example, for cron job, because it have changed between 120 and 123 or something like that.
Yeah.
And the kube control explain recursive. And when you are troubleshooting or you're debugging, like you try to find the bot that has an issue. Okay, maybe you need to show labels, maybe you need to show all namespaces. This will help you also. The difference between describe and logs. Okay, and so describe can show you an issue, especially if the bot starts running and stuff like that. And logs basically will show you if the container inside the bots or the container inside the bot have an issue. The dry run, actually I need to change this dry run client or dry run server. So the difference between dry run client and dry run server, the dry run client will not actually connect with the API server. So if there is admission controllers or if there is something like that, they will not be accounted for that. Most likely it will not be in the CKA exam, but on the CKS exam, that would be that would be a wrong answer because there might be admission controllers and they might change how the manifest will be manipulated.
All right. Since
the aliases are done by default, by the way, now in the exam, correct, Shoaib?
Say it again, please. Sorry.
So the alias is already configured for you. You have the K alias already configured for you.
It depends, I believe.
I'm not sure. I systematically go to the Kubernetes cheat sheet, and that's the first command that you can copy paste from there. You know, if you want, I can share my screen to show you with which.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the last two commands here from the cheat sheet.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for the gentleman that asked how easy it is to provision a Kubernetes cluster, Duffy Cooley from Cilium, actually, from Isovalent. He's working on Isovalent now. He has a hands-on CKA video and with notes. And actually, I am referencing them here. And they are like from another guy from Hungary, or he has like 50 plus tasks for his colleagues. I've shared them here. Yeah,
that's a lot, actually. Just so that we because if we are going to go on with certification, we are going to be passing the mark of 2 hours, I believe. But we have covered some overlapping between CKA, CKD, and CKS. So it is one straightforward question. What can you tell us about CKS in terms of differences, and how can we tackle actually the exam? Because for now we have covered that, okay, the certification of CKS should be targeted to security guys, engineers, admins, and so on. And also the cluster is going to be 8 clusters, so we need to focus on that. So the idea behind is, and also the work environment. So generally, kubeadm with the proper CNI can cover that for us to prepare for CKS. But now, what would be the concepts that we need to be focused on, and also the strategy to tackle the CKS, because I believe it is the hardest one of the mix.
So you need to know external resources. You need to know Trevi, and Trevi now can scan Kubernetes, can do lots of things. So I'm assuming that with time, Trevi role in the exam will be expanded even more. Because with Trevi, before it's just scanning images. But now it can scan images, it can scan cluster, it can scan manifest. Sysdig Falco is very important. And you need to really know how to create new rules and how to basically troubleshoot the events and the alerts that is happening, and how to create an app armor profile. And you have access to external references, but you shouldn't really be you should be familiar that you shouldn't really look up the external references. So cluster setup is 10%, cluster hardening is 15%. You see the minimized microservice vulnerability is 20%, which comes to Trevi, which comes to security scanners and stuff like that. Supply chain security, I'm not sure if they're going to bring SigStore and the other stuff. We might see changes on this exam. Monitoring, logging, and runtime security.
Sorry, Waleed, do you believe that we should be having like a learning path to get to the CKS? Because I believe going straight forward to either CKA and then CKS wouldn't be enough, right?
No. CKS you have to study, really. There is lots of new subjects.
So what would be the recommended learning path towards CKS, I would say?
So you have to. So basically, you have to be very familiar with the CKA. You have to know your control plane, how to enable audit logging, how to enable logging, and how to enable rollbacks and stuff like this. So rollbacks and roles and cluster roles are part of CKA exam. I'm not sure if they are part of CKAD exam, but they are. But here they will be more important. Creating a secret will be more important here. And if you look at the 3 last categories, the 3 last domains, they are the ones that hold the kingdom of this exam. So the vulnerabilities, the supply chain security, and the monitoring and logging runtime security. So when I say runtime security, it's straight away Falco. When I say logging, it's basically most likely ABI logs, ABI audit logs. And when I say monitoring, it's basically kubectl logs, or there will be no Prometheus. There will be no, but maybe kubectl top, kubectl logs, and kubectl describe. But how to do it and how to know what's there and what's not there, most likely it's again Falco. And basically the output of App Armor, the output for Trevi, the output of Falco.
Right. So do you have anything to add, right?
There is the Algerian or Moroccan brother that did the session with K8S Arabi. He covered this exam very deeply. Maybe we should reference him.
Yeah, I believe it's
I'm not sure if I have
Rahman, I believe it to me, or something like that, right? I guess he's Tunisian, I believe.
No, he's not Tunisian.
I'm not sure.
No, Moroccan.
He's Moroccan. I'm not.
Most likely Moroccan. Yes.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm interested into the links of his, of his covering.
I shared I shared the links on the chat as well, on
Yeah,
YouTube and Facebook.
yeah. What I wanted to add, I mean, actually, Walid said it all,
Yeah,
but
Jihad.
Jihad what? Ben Abra.
Ben Abra.
Yeah.
So he has lots of flags here. I cannot tell which flag. Morocco, you see?
He's Moroccan, yeah.
Is Moroccan, I believe.
Yeah.
But so Jihad is he did the CKS episode with Ahmed Samir, and it was a fantastic episode. I did also with Sysdig, and Sayam, he did another one with Sysdig, and Sayam has a book actually, and I put this book in the blog that I did first.
Okay.
And I'm with Falco. Yeah, this is the okay, and he did the blog. So here's the blog.
So can you share with us the link over the private chat, and I can share it with everyone.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess that here comes the next question that we have. Let's say we're all set. We've done like many practice in Kubernetes. Like today we have to pass our first certification. The question is, from where do we have to get the voucher to be like to pass the exam after? What are the different sources to buy the voucher?
If I may, if you work for a consulting company, you should definitely ask them for vouchers. Yeah, vouchers. Basically, basically they have partnerships with Kubernetes. So for myself, CKAD and CKA, I have used vouchers that have been provided by Devo Team, which was the consulting company I've been working for in 2021. For CKS, I used a voucher from Code Cloud. Actually, Memshad shared a 50% reduction voucher since he has a partnership with CNCF, and I have used that. So maybe you can, I think you should follow, Kubernetes influencers and technical content creators. They usually share vouchers. The last thing, no, that's all.
The last thing is the seasonal. So basically, every season, like Chinese New Year, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, KubeCon, whatever there is a big event for the community or a big event, they do whatever they call discounts. So now they just opened the KubeCon early bird for Detroit. So now you can buy a virtual ticket for $10, or you can even wait because they will be giving these virtual tickets before the event, like Kasten, VMware, they all do. They have been giving this virtual tickets for free, or they are giving them as part of a scholarship. If you get this virtual ticket, you will get 40% during the time of KubeCon. So KubeCon will be around 20th of October, maybe around 24th of October. You can get the voucher then.
So I believe this one is actually, Walid answers this question, why the Cube certs are very expensive, and I would like to pass them. So probably the hack in here would be going for the seasonal promotions that varies between 20 to 40% at the times 50%, and the best way to do it is to target the Cube cons and also the seasonal ones. I believe the biggest one would be the Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
Yes. It depends, because sometimes the KubeCon is like 40%, and there was at one time there was like 70% for Cyber Monday or something like this.
Exactly.
I mean, after I bought the ticket from KubeCon, and then you find another one that is much cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. I had one for the KCNA, and I bought it when they launched it, so it was a lower price. But after that, it got increased. and I had a voucher for the K8S, so I got it with a less, I would say a lesser price, I would say.
Yes.
And jumping on the question from Mariha when she asked about buying the exam voucher. Well, I would say for people who doesn't have like any partnership with companies, or they are by themselves, I believe they can go to Linux Foundation and they can buy the voucher from there, right? But
Yes.
how does the exam go? Meaning that should it be, because before I believe it was like going to a certified center to pass the exam, right? A person view or something like that. But now it is, you can do it like in your room at your home and so on. So and Shaib earlier spoke about the trick that he has about the timer, but and Walid, you spoke about a proctor. So can you walk us through that just quickly and briefly?
As far as I know, it was always remote. I never done on.
I'm not sure because when I started passing it, I believe, it was actually remote even for 2019.
Yeah, so it was always remote, and there is a proctor. The proctor used to be from Exam Local, but now I'm not sure if they have changed it or not, because now you do all their exam registration from Linux Foundation website. So you select the date, you select the time if you can find the time, and I always have problem with this website. It takes long to get to the right date. It gets long to get to the right time, and I have complained about it several times.
Yeah.
The moment you get your time and you get your date, you need to log in like half an hour earlier, so that the proctor basically will use a camera to check the room and to check under your desk and above your desk, and basically will ask you if you have drinks or any food that you are not supposed to have, or I think you have drinks now or something like this. I forgot now, but basically there are certain things that you shouldn't have, and if you have extra.
Actually, you are allowed to have a transparent drink. A transparent drink. It can't be a Coke, for example. It can't be a Coke. For example, a bottle of water, as long as the bottle doesn't have a paper, as long as the liquid in it is transparent, you're good to go. They will be also checking that you don't have, a digital watch or something in an iWatch or something in your wrist. So we will be showing your wrist. And basically the proctor will ask you to go through the room to make a rotation. They will need to check the four corners of the room, the top of your desk, the bottom of your desk, and basically that's it. I mean, whenever they feel confident that you are compliant to the exam conditions, they will tell you, okay, if you're ready, we can just unlock the exam.
So one of the problems they had is the networking issues. The moment they want to share the exam, it doesn't work. And we go through troubleshooting it. And the only time it worked if I use a VPN, and you are not allowed to use a VPN. But then he allowed it, and then he checks the application that is running, and he sees the VPN, and he says, shut down the VPN. I say, look, if I shut down the VPN, I cannot have the exam.
Yeah.
And the good thing about it, any problem you have, if you report it back to the Linux Foundation, they have a very good record of it. And they can give you extra time, or they can repeat the exam. And for one of my friends, they repeated the exam. So, yes.
And does the Linux Foundation is the organization that puts in the questions?
There is usually a committee. So there is a group of people. And they are the ones who put the questions. And from Linux Foundation, there is a team that reviews it, yes.
All right. Cool. And what would be, from both of your experience, what would be the things to avoid during the exam? Like either in terms of time management. I know we went through a lot, but let's say the top three or top of mind, either in terms of strategies regarding the exam, but also regarding the proctor, so that he wouldn't like red flag you or something like that. I still remember sometimes I'm like this during the exam or something
Yeah.
like that, which bothers him and
Yeah.
tells you should not do
Actually, yeah. So the first thing is that you should not be moving your lips when
Yep.
you are reading the question. That's very important. That's a bad reflex that I had. You should not cover your mouth. Sometimes you're like this. You should not cover your mouth because they may doubt that you are passing the questions to someone else. You should not also look outside your screen. Sometimes, I mean, when I am having a difficult question or that I need to relax, I will be thankful and I will be looking like this. And he told me, you are doing this a lot. If you do it again, I'm obliged. I will be in the obligation of shutting down your exam. And so just look at your screen, look at your keyboard if you're stuck, but don't look like this or this. You know,
Yes.
this is
One
something.
one
I
issue
think,
I had. Go ahead.
yeah, I think you are allowed to have a break, but I would have never heard of someone who took that
Yeah.
break. I mean, it's a
Absolutely
challenge.
not.
Yeah, but you are allowed to take the break, but the time will be passing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have
so the time doesn't stop. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Any
the only
additional?
issue I had was that my laptop camera is at the bottom, and he says, "Take your hands off." I say, "Look, I am typing. It's hands-on exam. I cannot take my hands off because basically the hands when I'm typing they block the camera. Sometimes they block my face. Yeah.
Okay.
So now I use external camera mostly.
Yeah,
You can use two displays, by the way.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So you can use two displays, one display for the document and one display for your work.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You reminded me of a very important aspect of the proctoring of the exam. They will be asking you to get your hands off the keyboard 3 times randomly. So a chat will pop up, and they will ask you to take your hands off. And this happened for me, for example, for the CKS 3 times.
Okay, I never had this experience.
I think the reason for that is that they want to make sure that the video that you are feeding to them is your actual video and not a recorded video of you.
Not some Ocean 12 type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for the camera visibility is also something very important because I have tendency to adjust the screen, and when you adjust the screen means the camera moves also, and
Cannot
sometimes
adjust.
it will have only half of your face or something like that. So yeah.
You're not supposed to adjust the laptop after or your
Yep.
workstation after the exam. And I have Eric Smalling. He has like a webcast workstation, so he has lots of cameras, lots of mics around him. They asked him to cover all of them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, a lot to note for my next exam, maybe. Well, maybe now we come to our last question, which is, in your opinion, should someone like a person which is novice dive directly into preparing the certification, or rather follow career learning path to get certified in the process?
I mean, my opinion is that getting started with the preparation of the certification will help you to detect your flaws and will help you customize your learning path towards the certification. For example, I mean, when I started to do Memshad courses, I mean, he does very good job at reminding the fundamentals, but sometimes I would like to go beyond what it is covered in his course. So I would be having a custom path, and I would be looking for more resources for shell scripting, for instance, for Linux security or networking, this kind of stuff. So you have two kind of people. So you have people who are more towards getting hands-on and discovering things. I would advise for those to start the preparation and then get conscious about their flows and start covering them. And for people who prefer to have more organized tracks, and I would recommend for them first to study Linux, Docker, and scripting.
Okay. Walid, for you.
Any-
I would say, so Mumshad, Code Cloud, they have a very extensive DevOps roadmap. Sayam Batak, who is a CNCF ambassador, also has a video, like I think 20 minutes, regarding the different jobs and basically mapping each job to what skills that you need to have. And they have there's lots of videos actually on YouTube from Free Code Camp, from CNCF ambassadors like David Flanagan, from Carlos Santana, from the DevOps guy, from the DevOps directive, from Nana, that
from CNCG Casablanca as well. Shameless plug, right?
Yeah, that one I cannot understand, but yes.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, so basically, and you have Slack channels, you have books, there is so many resources when it comes to cloud native. I mean, the number that Priyanka shared with us in the keynotes was 700 million. So that's developers, CNCF, all over the world. That's a lot of developers. And imagine just 1% of them is writing content or blogging about it or talking about it. That's so much content on the internet. So there is so much content on the internet, and most of it is free. And the vendors now, they are doing this custom, like Kasten, you saw that they are doing these badges. IBM, they are doing the badges. And the service mesh vendors, they are doing training and certifications and stuff like this, and they give you the voucher for free. So it depends on your track. Are you a developer? Are you a network engineer? Are you what are you, and what kind of things that you want to get out from your Kubernetes, from your cloud native journey? So if you want to start with development, I find actually Ambassador. It's on my blog. Ambassador, they are the developer of Emissary, the Ingress, and Brian, he's one of the active content creators. They have good videos. They have very good high quality videos, and they have very good training for developers, from coding to building to delivery, and very detailed ones and very good examples. So it depends on what you need. Red Hat, they have a very strong curriculum, the Red Hat Learning subscription, and they have lots of things, but it's around OpenShift. Rancher, they have the operator certified level 1 and level 2. I think they took level 2 offline. Tegira, the network provider, the CNI provider, they have like 4 courses for free, including eBPF, which is the trending very fast now, because you can do lots of things with less overhead. Yeah. So there are many resources. But as Shuaib said, start with the course. You don't need to do the certification, okay? But just start with the course. Make sure that you do the examples. Make sure you do the labs. You understand them. You communicate over Slack if you have any issues. And the moment you finish the course, I believe that you should start doing a project that that matters to you. Or maybe you should contribute. If you go to the SIG Contrib X and SIG Contrib strategy, you will find ways how to contribute to the different projects, to the graduated and the incubating projects. So you have so many projects that you can contribute. You don't need to contribute code. You can contribute documentation. You can contribute process. You can contribute logic. You can contribute feedback. You can review issues. You don't have really to write code. Okay, you can contribute style, by the way, on the documentation. Like if you know, most of the documentation are using a Hugo Markdown. So you can just contribute basically fixing the documentations and things like that. And that way, this gives you more credit on the CNCF, and you will be part of the CNCF organization, which allows you certain privileges like voting, like accessing the contributor summit in KubeCon, and lots of other stuff.
Yeah.
The one thing that we need to do, by the way, Karim and Shuaib, the number of scholarships were not 200, were not 2,000. They were 20,000, I believe. And most of these 20,000 were managed by 3 people from the CNCF. Sayam Batak, Conal, and Brad from New Zealand. So, but none of the okay, there was one Algerian, Muhammad Walid, but yani one scholarship out of so many. What we need to do is actually we try to get more scholarships for the MENA region. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe Shuaib doesn't count because he's in France. Like, but the one he got it was Algerian, and he was studying in France.
Okay,
Right.
cool.
So that's true.
So,
So
we need to work on that. We need to really to approach the CNCF and make sure that we can get more people from the MENA region into scholarships for the next KubeCon.
yep, I do agree.
Yep.
That's totally true.
Yeah, actually, that's another topic, but I wanted to talk about it. It's really, really, really important, and this is relevant for CNCF certifications and for every step in your learning journey. There is a very famous law called Parkinson's law that says work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. For example, if you want to organize your room, if you give yourself 1 hour, you will do it in 1 hour. If you give yourself the whole day, you will be given, the work will expand to fulfill your whole day. I really love deadlines. This is something that motivates me. So what I do usually in order to motivate myself is to buy the voucher, fix the exam, even when I do not feel ready for it, and that really motivates me to set the pace and the tone of my preparation. So just do it. If you want to get certified, buy the voucher, set your exam. My advice, depending on people's experiences, but I'm gonna give an average. I would say that people who have full-time jobs or students, it would take them 1.5 months to prepare for the certification on average. For me, for the first certification, it was 3 weeks, then 1 week for CKA. But that's the average. The average is 1.5 months. How about that, Wade? What do you think?
Yeah, for me, I have this kind of disorder, and I always do things the last minute. So basically, my Parkinson is like 1 hour in the last minute.
Pressure, meaning pressure.
Yeah,
Pressure
I don't
creates
have.
diamonds, right?
No, I have time blindness. So basically, if it's next week or 2 weeks from now, I don't feel like compelled to do it. But it's like, 1 day or 2 days, yes. I'm always the last minute.
Yeah.
So you like to create diamonds through pressure.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, actually, I'm reading a book about ADHD
Yes.
right now, and people with ADHD, they say, it's very good because it says that for people who have ADHD, for example, the time scale is either you have to do it right now, or either you have to do it
done.
later. For them, there is no difference between in 1 year, in 1 month, in 5 months. It's the same.
Yeah,
You
there's
see what
no
I mean?
gain.
Yeah.
Time for you is like it's past or it's future, and that's it.
Exactly.
There's only 2 points.
Yeah, actually I have. I think I'm very challenged regarding setting. Doing time management, etc., and setting and buying buying the vouchers and setting the exam is a way to motivate yourself. And by the way, I have never rescheduled the exam. In my mind, I trick my mind into the fact that I don't have the possibility to reschedule it while I can do it actually. So this way, I know that I have no other choice than just preparing and taking the exam on the deadline that I fixed to myself initially.
Yeah.
Maybe Linux Foundation should add a feature like talking to Proctor or someone like there. If I need to reschedule, don't let me, and that's it. And you pay extra even for it so that you can.
That would be
cancel
a fantastic feature. That would be a fantastic feature, and if they add it, I would definitely do it.
Yeah, so there you go. So it has been set in CNCG, right? So I'm not sure if Mediha, do you have any more other questions?
No, that's it for me.
Yeah, so I had, or there was some questions from the audience, and I believe we've answered. Walid answered them through chat, but also the answers to these questions either through questions regarding pricing or learning path and also background. But I believe when we are tackling cloud, means that we should be going through Linux, like system and networking, and that's it. There is no other way around these two topics, and security as well. So there is no way around it. I'm not sure if you have anything to add, because and I told Walid earlier, we target 1 hour and a half, and there you go, we are at 2 hours, and it always happens like that. And I know we have a very rich episode, but probably we are going to be scheduling an episode for each certification and the way we can crack it with hands-ons and so on. That would be much more interesting, so that we would know in a much closer look the ways we can do and crack these certifications. So
Yes.
do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I had something to add. I wanted to thank Walid for being here. I'm honored to be with a big name in the industry. I learned a lot from you, bro. I wanted to thank also Madiha for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to talk about a subject that I am really passionate about: containers, technology, and Kubernetes. And I will definitely subscribe, guys, to all your channels on social media. I did not know about your organization, the Casablanca Cloud Native Group. So I will be definitely following you on social media. I have viewed some videos of your YouTube channel, and you guys have very good content. So I really
Thank you.
advise all the people who are listening to us right now, do follow them and do subscribe
Thank
to, Walid blog and, your GitHub. I will go there to start your repos.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, and thank you. I mean, I really learned a lot of stuff today. So thank you.
Thank you.
So do we today.
So, what I wanted to do is actually, the honor is mine, Shuaib. The moment I saw who you are, and you are from Tunisia, and what you do for the other people and stuff like this, the mentorship and stuff like that, that's really great thing. And we lack this thing in the Arab world and the MENA region. I mean, we don't really have many like you, and the struggle that you have been through, and the learning curve, and the position you are in machine learning and stuff like this. This is really admirable. Next time حنتكلموا باللهجة البيضاء، اللهجة البيضاء دي صح؟
Really?
وحنتكلموا بزاف.
نتكلموا بقى.
exactly.
حندوي
شعيب علمنا نتكلموا باللهجة البيضاء.
ايه نهدروا ندووا بزاف.
نهضروا exactly. So شكرا بزاف فاش كنتوا معنا اليوم ولبيتوا الدعوة. ما عرفتش واش باقي شي حاجة أخرى تزيدوها في التوك.
والله وليد فكرني باني معناتها I wanted to share a link with the community. As he said, I actively mentor people with disabilities for free, people who want to land a career in tech. So I have shared a link. So يعني لو في أي واحد من ذوي الاحتياجات الخاصة، يعني لو عنده إعاقة حركية عضوية، توحد، أي نوع من الإعاقة، I'm really I mean هذه معركتي، نحسها هذه معركتي في الحياة، لأني شخصيا يعني عالم الإعلامية وعالم الديجيتال والكلاود غير لي حياتي. وليت حر. I work remotely today. I am married. I have 3 kids. I think يعني فرعيشك الله يبارك فيك. فأنا أعتقد لو ما كنتش يعني حر نفسي، لو ما كانش عندي الفاينانشال فريدم and the intellectual freedom، الحرية يعني المادية والذهنية والثقافية، ما كنتش يعني نحقق كل الأشياء اللي حققتها. احنا بلداننا في العالم العربي للأسف يعني ما زالت ماهيش مهيئة بزاف للعباد اللي هما عندهم إعاقة. accessibility is still a problem. and يعني بالنسبة للناس اللي يحبوا يدخلوا في التكنولوجي when they have a disability، هذا ينجم يكون مفتاح لانهم يكتشفوا يعني بلدان يعني ارض الله واسعه كما يقال، وهذا باش يكون ربما باب لانه يسافر ويشوف العالم والى اخره. So that's my battle. Yeah. وفيك بارك الله.
يعيشك يعيشك.
شكرا بزاف.
شكراً.
عايشك شعيب.
يعيشكم الكل.
شكرا لكم بزاف حيتاش كنتو معنا اليوم وعطيتونا بزاف ديال المعلومات فريمون مهمين بزاف. وبهذا غنقول غنضربوا موعد اخر بحلقه جديده من هنا 2 سيمانات. في هذه المره غيكون على Kubernetes 101. So we already did Kubernetes 101 where we talked about pods, deployment, and replica set this time, and services. So the next one is going to be about config maps, volumes, and so on. So voilà, شكرا بزاف و نتمنى لكم اسبوع موفق.
مع
الله فيك.
السلامه.
السلام عليكم.
Goodbye.
باي باي.
السلام.
سلام. تشاو. باي.
السلام.